let me hit my mute button. Hopefully you guys can hear me now. Hey, if you guys can hear and see me just fine, give me a shout out in the comments. Say that you can hear and see me and everything looks good. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've done this. Yeah. Well, I can hear myself now, so I assume you guys can hear me now. So yeah, if you can hear and see me, just give me the old shout outs, fellas. Hi, Marilyn. Yeah, so it's been a long time since I've done this because here's what's up. COVID is what's up. Marlene, Placid Peacock, Junebug Jewelry, Jennifer Coleman Davidson. Thanks, everyone. I'm so glad. Thank you for telling me you can hear me. It's always at the beginning of every live, I have this hit of anxiety being like, what happens if it doesn't work? And I've tested this last week, and it took me a really long time to figure it out because there was like this whole other thing. Anyway, well, I'll save you all the details. But it's been a while since I've gone live. The summer was super busy, and my kids just started back to daycare earlier this month. So that's allowed me more time to work and do things and have a little bit of peace. I'm noticing how echoey it is in this room. You can probably hear it because I used to have a really big queen size bed in my office that took up like 2/3 of the room practically. And we just got rid of it. And this is the first time I've recorded in this room, and I can't believe how echoey it sounds in here. So before I start recording season 2 of Bold Company, I'll have to furnish it a little bit more because it's, I don't know, not sounding great. So I have over here on this side, as you see me look off screen, I have my second monitor so I can watch the comments, because as I'm editing here on my computer, I won't be able to see anything other than my editing program. So if you guys have any questions, or if I ask you questions and I'm looking for an answer back, then I'll be able to look at the comments and see what's up. So Neelix, now, is that a reference to Star Trek, the Neelix thing? I'm okay if it is. Anyway, yeah, foam pads. Well, I'm going to get a day bed for in here, a really nice day bed and some rugs, and really gonna pimp this office up nice. So I'm excited about that, and it'll be a lot better once I get more stuff in here. Right now, it just seems very empty and stuff. So yeah, great. Okay, so here's what's up today. I'm gonna be editing some photos live for all of you. This is a very fun thing for me to do. It's something that my Snapcell Succeed students love. By the way, it would probably be easier to ask who's not in Snapcell Succeed, who's here, but let me know if you are in Snapcell Succeed or if you're not. So Snapcell Succeed is my product photography course, for anyone who's wondering. So I asked my students to submit photos to me that they took, and then I edit them live on air here for everyone to watch. So you can see the magic of photo editing. And I also think it's really helpful to see that your photo doesn't have to necessarily be perfect right out of camera. It helps. It makes life a lot faster. It makes editing a lot more streamlined and quick, but some of my photos look pretty rough out of camera even, but I'm able to save them through editing. And I just want people to see what's possible and know what's up. All right, lots of Snapcell Succeeders here. A few who are not, that's great. FYI, Snapcell Succeed is open for enrollment right now for only 1 more week. It is the last time it will be open until 2020. And I want to let y'all know right now, and I'll say it again at the end, that today, tomorrow, and Friday, if you enroll any of those days, then you get a bonus of my Photoshop Actions and Lightroom presets, which I'm going to be using some during this demonstration. So you get a chance to see what they look like. They're super fast, like kind of one-click edits. I know people have loved them, which is awesome. I love using them too. They are a lot faster than kind of doing everything from scratch every time. So yeah, that is something that I want to share with everybody today. Now, I'm going to be using both Photoshop CC and Lightroom Classic CC. Now, Lightroom Classic, so for whatever reason, Adobe felt like it would be a good idea to have 2 editing programs that are called the same thing, but are different. So I use Lightroom Classic CC. It's more of a higher level. So regular Lightroom, or what Lightroom has always been this to me. They just introduced this new kind of light version recently, and it just doesn't give you quite as much flexibility. So I use Lightroom Classic. That's what I teach in. That's what I do all my demonstrations in. Lightroom Classic or Lightroom CC, you can do some of the same stuff. It just doesn't have quite the same refining capabilities. So I like to use Classic because it just has a little bit more, you know, a little bit more something, a little something special, a little something extra. And especially when, now look, I know you guys aren't professional product photographers, and you don't have to be professional product photographers, but editing your photos does need to be done in a very specific way. And there are a lot of editing programs out there that you may think are good for your business, and they're really not, because they don't allow you to do a few really important key things that you have to do for product photography. Now, those are the kind of things that normal people would never have to worry about. Like if you're just taking photos of like your family who is on vacation and you want to edit them, then you can use any of these programs, it doesn't matter. But certain things, like you have to really be able to fine tune the color balance. You guys all know what I'm talking about, especially if you sell products that are kind of really delicate in the color balance area, like turquoises and purples and all these things. You know how easy it is for them to get out of whack, or even reds. Lots of colors are really hard to render accurately, and you need to be able to tweak those really in a fine-tuned way, because obviously showing the authenticity of the colors of your product is really, really important when selling online, or you're going to have some very unhappy customers and lots of returns and all of that stuff that's no good. So some editing programs are great at that stuff, and some of them are not great at that stuff. So it's really important to choose an editing program that does allow you to do these things, even if it feels like it might be overkill for your skill level or for what you need it for, because you're using editing photos for your business. You do need to have those more professional level programs. You don't have to know everything about them. You don't have to know how to use all of the tools, but you do need to be able to do these few key things. For the record, my recommendations for photo editing are Photoshop CC, which I'll be using, Lightroom Classic CC. And if you're not, I mean, that for me is the best. I just feel like if you're serious about your business, just go for it. It's $10 a month. Just, it's important. But if you super aren't into the payment idea, like you don't like being locked into having to pay a certain amount every month, then a good alternative is Affinity Photo. And that has, it's quite robust. It's quite similar to Photoshop in a lot of ways. It's a one-time payment of like $40 or $50 or $60, depending on if it's on sale. And it has a lot of capabilities. So, I mean, there's not as many tutorials and things like that online. So if you get kind of stuck, it might not be as easy to get through. But it provides you with everything that you really need. So I like that. Now, a lot of people are using Photoshop Elements, and Photoshop Elements is a rough one, you guys. It does not allow you to do the really fine tuning with the color balance. It's really frustrating. It's frustrating for me as a teacher, because I know a lot of you use Photoshop Elements, but there's limitations, and it's unfortunate. And I think that there's somebody out there who's recommending Photoshop Elements to makers, and they're wrong, because it's a very, very light version of Photoshop. So, and unfortunately it strips a lot of the things that you need it to do, like the fine tuning of the color balance. That's really the main thing for me, is that it doesn't allow you to do that, which sucks. Okay, any questions? If you guys have any questions throughout any of this, please just drop them in the comments. This is a pretty informal kind of situation. I don't have any kind of specific direction I'm going with this. I have a handful of photos open in Lightroom. I have a handful of photos open in Photoshop. I'm going to go through both of them. Now, if you are one of my students and you have submitted a photo, when you see your photo, please let me know that it's your photo. I don't necessarily have it all kind of sort of like, I don't know whose photo belongs to who, basically. So when you see your photo, please just give me a shout out, because I may have questions. You know the true nature of your photo and of the color, sorry, not your photo, but your product. So if I'm not sure if I'm nailing the colors correctly, then you can kind of provide me a little guidance on whether they look true or not. Also, my chair is very loud. You'll probably hear it. I'm getting a new one. And yes, Jen, I know Renee suggests Elements. Kind of wish she didn't, but That's okay. I'll just keep spreading the word as much as I can. You guys can do the same. Because yeah, it just doesn't quite give you the same finessing of the colors, which is super important. Now, I mean, look, people like who are handmade business coaches, they don't have the expertise in the product photography arena the way I do. They have experience with their own photos, and they may have done fine with it, but they don't have the same real finger on the pulse of the whole product photography thing, which is why I do what I do. And which is why I work with so many handmade business coaches, because they know that, and they kind of defer to me on the whole thing. Cause that's it. That's all I know. That's my thing. They can teach you all the other things to do with handmade business. I will teach you the product photography bit. So just beware when you do hear other pieces of advice out there about product photography. And if you're not sure, feel free to check in with me and ask, because I'm always happy to help. And yeah, I'm just hoping everyone gets the right tools, the right things. And I mean, most of you know me, and you know that I'm not the type of person to recommend anything that I think is overkill. Like, I'm not going to recommend you get the best camera or all these elaborate lighting setups or all these fancy pieces of equipment. I don't even like to do that. I have a really nice camera, but obviously that's important for a professional photographer. But I like to keep things really minimalist too. And I wouldn't recommend a different editing program if I didn't think it was really necessary. All right, so recommendations for Marilyn is asking, please repeat the programs that I recommend. And that is Lightroom, Photoshop, which are both Adobe products. You get them bundled together in something called a photography bundle, the Adobe photography bundle, and it's $9.99 USD a month, unless that price has changed. There was rumor that it was going to change. I haven't checked lately. I don't think it has. Yeah, so it's pretty affordable for those two programs. And I mean, they're like really high level programs. So to me, $10 a month is outrageously inexpensive, when it used to be like just so much money to buy the program. Now it's kind of a subscription base, and they're always updating it, and it's just a better deal. And then if you don't want to do the monthly thing, then Affinity Photo is a good alternative to Photoshop. So that usually has a really good sale around Black Friday. If any of you are interested in picking something like that up, they usually have a good deal around that time. So Kathy said, waiting to get started on your next Snapsell Succeed workshop. Do you have a start date? So Kathy, Snapsell Succeed is currently open for enrollment, if that's what you mean. It is open until October 14th. And right now there's a really limited time bonus. Today, tomorrow, and Friday, any enrollments will get the full set of my Photoshop actions and Lightroom presets included at no extra cost with their enrollment. And it's one of my favorite tools. And I know that a lot of people love them, which warms my heart to no end, because I love them too. And I'm glad that I can help people save a little bit of time in their editing process. So it is open right now. We're right in the middle of the Brilliance project, which is kind of it's a free project, 2 weeks long. Unfortunately, joining it now is closed because I didn't want people to get too behind and then have to scramble to catch up. So that's it for this year if you haven't signed up yet, but I'm loving the Brilliance project. Is anyone here in the Brilliance project? I am having so much fun. The creativity is amazing. Anyway, it's a free project to help people get excited about product photography, see the possibilities, see how they can extend their already existing creativity to encompass product photography. And then Snapsell Succeed is going to help it all come together with all of the technical how-to and put all the pieces in place. You don't have to sign up for Snapsell Succeed if you're in the Brilliance project. You might not even have to if your photos are fantastic. But I know a lot of you still need the help, so Snapsell Succeed is there for you if you want it. Okay. All right, so Sarah said, my computer has Photoshop, kind of like to edit color saturation and things like that. Isn't that good also? No. So if your computer comes with an editing program on it, it's probably not going to be robust enough. The other thing that your photo editing program has to do is it has to do this thing called embedding a color profile. And that's something that typically only the more, I don't want to say high-end programs because that's not necessarily true. But some of the more thoroughly developed photo editing programs do include that, but there are a lot that don't. And a lot of free things don't include editing. It doesn't embed that color profile, which is super, super important. If you guys have no clue what I'm talking about right now, after this is over, check out a couple of videos on my YouTube channel because I go over what it is, what is a color profile, and how to embed it. I talk about how to find out if your editing program does embed a color profile. There's like a few different videos that you should check out for sure because it is so, so important. Good. I'm so glad everyone's loving the Brilliance project. Yay. Good. I'm loving it. It's so wonderful. And I'm going to run it every year. I think it's just been so good. I mean, I hope that September is a good time of year for it. I'm kind of thinking we'll just keep going with it every year. We'll do it and feel creative and have some fun and get together as a community. And it's really rewarding for me too. So, yeah, cool. All right, guys, I'm going to get into this. Let's get into this. So I'm going to start with Lightroom. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to Lightroom Classic. Oh, it's kind of a gong show. I'm just going to share my whole screen. It makes it so I can share just one program, but for some reason, Lightroom's like all caught up in different things. All right, let's see. I'm just going to wait until the feed catches up. So I'm going to watch for it on my other monitor here to make sure it's all coming together. Take a drink of water. There we go. Well, that's the Photoshop one. We're going to get there in a minute. There we are. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go here into my Develop tab. Now, this is Lightroom Classic CC for anyone who's just joining us. Do I even have my presets? I do have, okay, good. For a moment, I wasn't sure if I even had, oh, I only have some of them installed in here. This is something I should, oh, well, that's most of them anyway. This is a new computer to me, not new, like I've had it for a few months, but I haven't necessarily installed my presets and actions on all of them yet. So, but I have enough and they're just down here in the user presets. So, but I'm not necessarily going to use those. Okay, so let's start with this first photo. All right, student whose photo this is, please raise your hand. Pretty sure you're here. And by the way, Anne, who said, I love the Brilliance Project emails, but haven't had the time to take any photos, unfortunately, that is totally okay. I wanted the tasks to be thoughtful and not take you too much time. If you do dive into the photo aspect of it, it's going to take longer because I also want to give people the opportunity to practice what they're learning and put it into place. But really the important thing I think is that you take the time to think, reflect about the daily task, and then you can apply it when you do have the opportunity to take those photos. Because I totally understand the not having time thing, big time. So Kelly, if you have Lightroom Classic, it will look like what mine looks like right now. And up here in the top left corner, it'll say Adobe Lightroom Classic. This is just for desktop. The mobile version is only Lightroom CC. Now, Lightroom CC for your mobile device, whether it be your iPad or your phone or whatever, is a great program to use to edit some photos. It does embed a color profile. It does give you the opportunity to tweak those colors. It can be difficult on a phone to really fine tune it because all you have are the sliders. And if you're like me, clumsy thumbs, and it's really hard to kind of fine tune the colors. Now I have used Lightroom CC on my iPad with my Apple Pencil, and I found it to be really good at, I just kicked something and I thought it was my dog. It was not. But it makes it a lot easier to fine tune that stuff. So I do think that that's a decent alternative as well. So there's kind of steps you can go through. Some are going to give you a little bit more finesse than others. But I do think that the mobile version of Lightroom is also a great option. And it is only Lightroom CC that you can get on that. But if you have the desktop version, it will say Lightroom Classic up in the top there. I don't know why Adobe wants to just confuse us. So, okay, guys, so here we have a photo. And this is a great photo of needles, I think. I'm not a professional, you guys. Maybe the student who submitted this is not here. I'm not sure, but we're going to go ahead and edit it anyway. Now, when I first looked at this photo, first of all, I don't think that there's a whole lot of work to do on this photo in terms of editing, which is awesome. Ideally, you're going to take a great photo, what we call in camera. So the photo is already going to look as close to as great as possible when you take it. So you have less work to do afterwards because it's going to make your editing process a lot faster. It's going to save you a ton of extra time. So you really only have to tweak a few things. You always want to come in and tweak the colors to make sure that they're accurate. You want to crop and resize because they're not going to come out of your camera the right size for the internet. And then you want to make sure that it's embedding that color profile and maybe just adjust the tones a little bit here and there. So I'm going to show you how I do that. So the first thing that I will do is normally I would crop and resize. Now this has already been cropped for a square ratio. And so I'm not going to crop it any further. This would be perfect for if you're using, Shopify or something on your own website, or if you're going to upload this to Instagram or anything like that. For Etsy, I recommend a 4:3 ratio, which is a little bit wider than it is tall, because that is the same ratio as the thumbnail view when somebody searches and it shows up in the search results. So that way you ensure that no part of your product is going to be cut off by the edges of the photo in those thumbnails, because that thumbnail is your opportunity to capture somebody's attention and get them to click through to your listing. So you don't want part of your product to get cut off, or people probably aren't going to click through. So now let's see what we can do here. So my first thing I would do is maybe tweak the colors. I personally like that it's not dark, but it's slightly on the rainy day moody side, which I don't hate. But let's say that it's just a little bit too dark. So the first thing I can do is, you'll see that if you see this, see how it's changing rapidly? It's because I'm mousing over the Lightroom presets that I've created over here on the side. And as I mouse over, it gives me a preview of what it'll look like if I apply that preset. So if I want to apply the too dark preset, like if I look at this photo and I think it's a little too dark, then I can mouse over the too dark preset, click on it, and that is instantly applied, which is awesome. Now, it did brighten up what I wanted it to, but I think that the black part of the photo, like the actual darker parts of the photo, look maybe a little bit too bright. So I can go over here to the tones, and I can take this black slider and just move it to the left. And that is going to increase the dark tones in the image. Now, I'm going to tell you this right now as I'm talking and realizing this. This is a funny story. So the last time I did live photo editing on YouTube, partway through my stream got pulled down and basically was flagged as being inappropriate. And so anyway, it interrupted the live stream, took it down, was not on my channel, completely gone. And I think that YouTube has kind of an algorithm that picks up certain words, certain language, certain expressions that could be related to like hate speech or anything just really they don't want on their, they don't want to provide a platform for. Now, in photo editing, we talk a lot about the whites and the blacks of an image. So in June, I did this shortly after, there was that was when the whole Black Lives Matter movement really went to the next level. So it was a very heightened time for that kind of speech. And of course, phrasing it that way sounds incredibly inappropriate. And I believe that my video was flagged and taken down for that reason. Unfortunately, I don't know how else to say it because this is photo editing and that's not the topic we're talking about. So maybe I'll revert to it and call it dark and bright or something just to avoid that whole mess again. So I just increased the darkest parts of the photo because I wanted them to pop more. Now here they were in the middle. This is what they look like before, just kind of a little bit washed out, right? So I'm just going to bring the richness in a little bit more. Now I'm really seeing a definition between the light parts of the image and the dark parts. Often when we first get a photo right out of camera, there's not necessarily, especially if you use natural light, there's not a huge, you need to increase the contrast a little bit. I highly recommend avoiding this contrast slider over here because it's just going to give you no control. It just brightens the brightest parts and darkens the darkest parts. So it doesn't give you any kind of fine tuning about what you want that to look like. Because in this situation, for example, I think that the brightest parts of the image look fine, but I just wanted to adjust the darkest part. So if I had used that contrast slider, it would have brightened the other stuff I didn't want it to. So that's that. Now, my next concern is the color balance. So without knowing the true color of this, because this is not my product, I don't have it in person and in front of me, I'm going to go ahead and assume that the elastic is black. Now, if you look at the color of the elastic and you look at the color of the black on the needles below, they kind of have two separate tones. One looks kind of yellowish and the other one looks almost kind of bluish. So I have to decide myself with my own eyes what's going to be the most appropriate. Now, you can use something called a gray card in this situation to set the white balance with this dropper tool here. But if I want to mouse over this and find something that I think is going to be like as close to a neutral as possible, I can click on it and it will adjust the image tones. So I think that that did a good job. I thought it looked a little bit blue before, and now I think it looks a little bit more true to tone. So I'll just show you what it looked like. This is what it looked like before, and this is what it looked like after. So it just, now when you look at the blacks, like the dark parts of the image, like the elastic, you can tell that it looks a little more on the neutral side, whereas before maybe it looked a little bit on the blue side. Yeah, the important thing is to try your best to make the colors in the photo look as authentic as possible. The other key to that is that I want to share is, while it's important to try your best to get the colors to look accurate, everyone's going to be looking at these photos on a different device. Someone could be looking at it on their phone, and their phone could have the blue filter on, and the colors are going to look totally different. Somebody could be looking at it on an old monitor, and they're going to be totally different. Even the tones between my iPad Pro and my MacBook Pro are different. And it's like the same company, and they were both made the same year, like last year or something. And even those are slightly different. Like there's always variations. So it's just try your best, you know, tweak it as much as you can. Don't go overboard, because sometimes people get real carried away with their color balance and end up making it go too far the other way. And then just try to explain in your description somewhere that you make every effort to ensure that your colors are rendered as accurately as possible, but you can't account for variations in the user's individual device. So there could be some variations. Now, as I look at this with my own bare eyes, it looks a little bit slightly on the green side, so I might just pull the magenta slider slightly to the magenta side, because the magenta slider is going to balance your greens and magenta, whereas the temperature slider here adjusts the blue and yellow. So it'll either make the photo look more blue or more yellow. All right, so that looks fine to me. I'm actually happy with this photo. I would upload this. I would have no problem with that at all. Let's take a look at the before and after, shall we? Probably won't be a huge difference, but this is the before and after. So you can see the photo on the left, slightly on the too dark side, but barely. Lacked a little bit of contrast. It lacked the pop. It feels a little bit more distant in a weird way, whereas the edited version feels a little bit warmer. It feels like I can reach out and understand what the texture of those needles is going to feel like. And the elastic, the colors look more accurate, the tones look more accurate, and it's just, we're good to go. Done. Any questions, guys? You guys are being awfully quiet over here. I'm just hang on one sec. I'm going to just check here. All right. Good to go. Moving on to the next one. Okay. I have to get my mouse back over here. Here we go. All right. Next. Well, that's not a before and after. Let's have to get this back to the, oh, here we go. There we go. I am going to change the background to dark gray. All right. So now, does this photo belong to anyone who's here watching this right now? If it does, then please let me know. All right, so first thing I'm going to do, I see a little bit of white over here, so I might just crop this a tiny bit more to remove that. Use the crop tool over here on this side, on the right side at the top. And then I'm just going to just pull that in a tiny bit so that doesn't show up there. First thing I noticed about this is that it's too dark, so I'm also going to utilize I might actually utilize the way too dark one, so click on that. I'm going to go ahead and increase the darkest parts of the image again because I want them to pop a little bit more. That looks good. Now, the biggest thing about this photo is that it's too cool. So it's too blue. It's too on the blue side. So I want to fix that. Now I can use my eyedropper here, but I don't know where in the image is a neutral color. So what I might try to do is use my preset that says too cold. And that doesn't really seem to be quite providing me with what I want. So I am going to try the eyedropper and see if I can, I don't really think there's anything on here. Now, as you can see me going around, I'm looking at the photo in the top left here under where it says navigator, and it's giving me a little preview of what it would look like if I clicked. So you can see like if I'm on the blue, that's real wacky, right? So I don't necessarily see anything that's giving me a true sense of a neutral here. So I'm going to eyeball it. Oh no, was that yours, Rachel, that we just used? I might have another one of yours in here somewhere though. So stay tuned because you sent me two and I'm not sure if I have the other one or not out. So it might still be coming. So hang tight. Okay, so I'm just going to use the slider here and slide it towards the yellow and warm it up a little bit, not too much. But I think that this is probably more accurate. I could be wrong because I don't know what these look like in person, but this is the sense that I get from the image that this is probably a more accurate look. Now, the brightest brights of the image I want to increase. So if I use this slider tool, it will brighten up the bright parts of the image more than all of the other tones. So it'll like kind of the lightest ones, like the high end of the spectrum, like the whitest whites will start to change. And it won't affect the other colors as much, like the colors in the different darker tones as much, which I enjoy. Might just see about bringing that down a tiny bit. Still looks a little bit on the cool side. I'm gonna try that. That might be better. A little bit of that. Yeah. Good. And then there's some of these other ones that I don't think I need any of these right now. Cool. So I think that this is probably good. I could brighten it more. I don't particularly want to brighten it more because as you can see up here in the top, it's starting to get a little bit on the too bright side, starting to get a little bit blown. We call it blown out highlight. So if you start to see some real detail being lost because it's getting too bright, then it tells you you're getting a little bit too carried away. So to me, I think this looks pretty good. So I would do the old before and after, which is side by side right here. This is this is your favorite part. Everyone loves a good before and after. So this is the kind of showing what we just went through. And that is that. All right. And again, if you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments. Moving on. Okay, so here is a keychain, probably. Anyone, if this belongs to you, let me know. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and use one of these presets to start. I'm going to do the way to just too dark, I think, for this one to give me a baseline. Linda, who is asking about how to size a photo for Etsy, I have an excellent YouTube video that will cover all of that in a much more concise way, and I demonstrate how to do it. So I would highly recommend checking that out. It's called Etsy Sizing 2020 or something like that. And that will really answer your question in a much more straightforward way than I'll be able to do right now, because I'm not actually going to be exporting these. I'm not going to be saving any of these photos. So watch that video. That video will cover exactly how to do that. And I also have a video on how to optimize photos for the web. So that helps you make sure that while you are sizing it correctly, you're also making sure that the image size is fairly small while retaining quality so that it doesn't slow down your website or slow down your shop or anything like that. So those two videos will be really helpful. There's the optimizing images for the web and Etsy Sizing 2020. So check those out on my channel for sure. Okay. All right, baby bee diva, let's do this. So my first thing I want to do is increase the whites until I feel like they're good enough. So I'm going to go right about here because I don't want to increase the whites too much. If I go all the way to the max, you can see how the bracelet itself is starting to look really unnatural. So I'm going to tone it down to the beads because I want the beads to look authentic, which I think they do right there. I'll increase the blacks a tiny bit there. See if we can help with that. Let's play around with some of this one. That's no good. Oops. Wrong one. This one can come back down. Highlights. What happens if I mess with you? We'll leave you down a little bit. So that looks fine. Now what I might do is come down here if I want to fine tune this even a little bit more and tweak the, because okay, so the background, let's say that we want this background to be pure white. So that's like, you can upload it to Amazon kind of white and it blends in with the rest of the page kind of white. Now, what I would do if I wanted to do that is I would be doing this in Photoshop because Photoshop's going to allow me to work in different layers so that I can make the background totally white, but the bracelet itself, I can have on a separate layer and do all this masking work, and it's a lot. But I might be able to improve the background a little bit by using the slider here. Now, my biggest thing is I don't want to influence the color of the beads. I don't want the beads to get too bright white. So I am going to leave it at that. If I wanted the background to be even whiter, I would use Photoshop. But here's the thing about those pure white backgrounds. You don't really need them. They look kind of sterile. If you do need them for Amazon, then you can do this in Photoshop to actually get that white background. Or if you need it for like a certain publication you're submitting to, or if a certain wholesaler wants you to have that, then you have some options for sure. Now let's talk about crop and resize. So I will go ahead and crop this as 4:3 ratio, which currently is the correct size for Etsy. So Etsy is working on a 4:3 ratio right now. So this gives me the correct ratio. Now, in terms of the sizing, like somebody just asked, I would adjust the size of the pixels when I go to export the photo. When I go to save it, I would set what size I want the pixels to be. But that's not something that I do at this process. So I guess that's pretty much it. Let's see what the color pump up the color. So I could pump up the color with this preset. It's a little aggressive though, so I might not. It's a little bit too much. I don't want it to look oversaturated. That's something that you really want to avoid. But what you can do is increase the vibrance a little bit. It helps pump up the colors, but in a less kind of aggressive way. So that just helps make the colors pop a little bit more. All right, and that's all I would do for this. So let's go ahead and check out the side-by-side. So you can see there the difference. So it's brightened. The whites are a lot whiter. The colors are popping more. And I think we still maintain the integrity of the actual beads. Yeah. What do you think? Baby Bee Diva, does it work? Does it do the trick? The only thing I might change is I might just bring the blacks down a tiny bit to make them pop a little bit more. Like that. There. That's fun. All right, so that's it for that one, guys. Let's move on. All right, let's go back to the before view. So here's a photo from one of my students, Celine, I believe, and I don't know if she's here today, but this is one of her beautiful photos. She's been in Snap Sell Succeed for a while, so her photos have a tendency to be very well done. There's not a lot of editing that has to be done out of the camera because she has a really firm grasp on, all of the lighting and all of that stuff. So there's not a whole lot to do. In terms of cropping, I don't know how much I'll crop this. We'll see what we can do because I love the different, work with me here. Boop, here we go. Go to 4:3 and I want to have the candle in there because I think that's it's really nice for the vibe of the photo. I can have a little less of this thing over here, even though I love it. And I think it's really cool, the card and the little moon mat there. But this helps here. Let's see, maybe we do this a little bit too. Now, this is a styled photo that she would use for like either a banner on her website or social media or something like that. This isn't necessarily a photo that she would upload to a product listing because there's obviously a lot going on. There's a couple different kinds of her jewelry here. So this is more like a lifestyle shot for her brand, or not necessarily, well, partially a lifestyle shot, but also really selling like the vibe and the brand behind her business. So this is a very well styled photo for social media or for marketing graphics and things like that. All right. So I don't think I want to use any of these because it's already pretty good. Actually, I'll use the too dark, and then I'm going to do the same and bring the blacks down a little bit. Yeah, because I want it to pop. Sometimes I'll put this up into full screen so that I can get a closer look to see how I feel about it. Maybe, we'll see. Still deciding how I feel about it. Because I also don't want it to be too much. I don't want the contrast to be too heavy. That looks pretty good. Now, in terms of color balance, this background that she uses is a marble, so it's possible that there could be some neutral points in here that would help us. So I'm just going to use that. And then I'll blink a few times there. That gives it's slightly too magenta. I'm just going to I find it a little bit on the pinkish side. I don't know about you, if you guys can see that or not. It's just very, very slight, but I don't want it to be too much of that. So I think this is probably all I'll do with it. The left side is a little bit darker than the right side, so I could use this preset that's uneven light, left side too dark. And what that does is it brightens up the left side a little bit. And that just helps even out the light of the photo a little bit. Now, what I don't love that just happened was I think that it might have washed out the dark tones of this candle, but because the candle isn't the thing for sale, I'm not super concerned about it, if that makes sense. What I wanted to do is make sure that the tones of the product is really well represented. That's more important to me than necessarily the props. So let's see, this is what it looked like before. This is what it looks like now. I think I'll keep it. If I really wanted to bring back in some of the dark tones of that candle, I can use the adjustment brush, and that's up here in the top right. You can see where my mouse is. If I click on that, then I can make the settings for a particular, I can set them however I want and then use the brush to apply those settings. So let's say I just want to increase the blacks a little bit. That's all I want to do. So I've set that at the darkest tones. I just don't want to say it because I don't want to get my video torn down. Then I just decrease that a little bit. And now, as you can see, when I color over this, it just kind of brings the richness back into that candle. All right, and that is all I would do for this. Now let's check out the side by side. Not a huge difference. Bit of a crop. Well, you can't actually tell the difference in the crop because the before and after doesn't show the crop. But we've just kind of lightened it a tiny bit so that you can see kind of the detail on the stitching that she uses in a really tangible way. We adjusted the color balance a little bit, evened out the light a little bit because it was slightly darker on the left side, but barely. Yeah, and it's good to go. Done. That is that. All right, moving on to Photoshop now. Everybody ready for this? Okay, so first up, I have a photo that is open in Camera Raw. So Camera Raw is a plugin for Photoshop. So in Photoshop, the program, it doesn't process raw files. Camera Raw does, so that's how Photoshop works with the raw files. So it opens in Camera Raw first. When you're in Camera Raw, what you need to do as many of your edits as possible in Camera Raw, because for those of you who don't know what a raw file is a way of taking the photos. You actually set your camera to take photos in a raw file format, which depending on the camera has different extensions, DNG, NEF, CR2, etc. So open it in this, And then you can do as many edits as possible because the raw photos have a ton of data in them. So with a JPEG, what you see is what you get. When you edit that photo, when you edit a JPEG, you are just manipulating the pixels. So the pixels that are there on the photo are there, and you're changing, you're either making the pixels lighter or brighter or whatever, just changing the colors of them. And that's totally fine. But with a raw photo, when we go to edit it, you're actually able to use all of this data. So you're not just changing pixels, you're pulling in data like as if the photo was taken at a brighter exposure or a darker exposure or a different color or whatever. So it's actually pulling in real data. So you're able to do better edits, maintain much better detail, fine tune things a lot more. If you work with things that are really delicate color wise, it's a really good idea to use raw. I actually recommend everyone use raw because it's the only downside to raw is that you can't take that photo directly from your camera and upload it to the internet. You have to run it through some sort of processing thing like Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever to save it as a JPEG afterwards. But because you should be editing all your photos anyway, it doesn't really make a difference. All right, Junibug Jewelry. She said, not the best in camera. I know. That's great. That's perfect. This is an opportunity to show what is possible with photo editing, especially because you did photograph it in RAW. So that gives us a lot more flexibility. And certainly, even I sometimes take a photo that I really like especially if I'm out, not so much product photography, because I could just retake it at a different, settings. But let's say I'm doing lifestyle photos with, one of my children or something. I'm chasing them, following them around. They have a product in their hands. And there's a really great shot, but the settings are a little bit funky because I just turned into the sun or we're just turned away, or we're in a darker spot of the yard or whatever. Then having the raw photo allows the power to do that. So sometimes even my photos don't look that great coming out of camera, but that's what editing is for. All right, so let's show everyone what we're doing here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the exposure to a baseline point. Now, if this had been shot in a JPEG and I did this, it wouldn't look real great. It would look kind of muddled because you're manipulating pixels that are already there. And it doesn't the computer's not smart enough to know what should be under all this darkness. It just brightens it. But the raw photo is able to bring in the other data. So we're going to increase the exposure quite a bit, which is a great start. Already we can see the potential for this photo. So then we're going to go ahead and crop. So in Camera Raw, the crop is up here on the top, and you have to click and drag. And you can drag whatever ratio you want. Hang on one sec. I'm going to, first of all, I have to move my face. My thing was up there. So I want to, can I hit escape for this? I don't know. There we go. And I'm going to just get the right ratio. So I'm going to do 3 to 4, but this direction. So over time, we're going to upload this to Etsy. Maybe try to center this a little bit too much, give it lots of space around the edge, but not too much. There, cropped. Okay, done. So that looks pretty good. I'm covering my eyes because I have a really bright ring light in my face that's making it difficult. That's making it difficult to see this photo, and I want to get a good look at it to see what else I need to do. It's looking pretty good. I think what I'll do is now that I've got it to a baseline, I will increase the tones individually. So I'm going to pump up the highlights a little bit, probably decrease the shadows just a smidge, and increase the whites to kind of get a little bit more brightness in there. And just, I don't want to decrease the blacks too much. Now, Junibug, you're here. Let me know, what tone should the elephant charm be? Is it a darker blue? Is it a lighter blue? Does it look pretty accurate right now? And also, guys, know that there is about a 20-second delay between what I say and what you guys hear. So, I'm going to meander on for a few minutes waiting for her to reply. But just so that I want to make sure that I first and foremost get the tones correct on the actual product itself, because that is the most important thing. I'm going to take a drink. Ooh, and also let me know, is the background actually pure white? Like, is it an actual white background? So she said medium to teal blue. So right now, this looks to me like it is blue. So I'm not really getting the teal. So I probably have some adjustment to do in terms of the color balance. Now let's see what happens when I use the white balance tool, which is up at the top. And I just click anywhere here on the background. I'm going to assume the background is a neutral white color. And we're just going to see what happens. Not too much. So not too much happened. I'm worried that if I adjust it too much to get a teal on the elephant, that I'm going to really be messing up the background colors. Let's see what happens. So if I want a teal, I'm going to go a little bit more towards the yellow side. And maybe bring down that a little bit. So I will ask again, does this color look more accurate? I don't love the way the background looks right now, but I can work with that. What's more important is that the charm itself looks true to form. So I feel like this is probably good. I can go ahead and increase the whites a little bit more. That will help, because if the white part is not white enough, then it will take on some of that color balance that we're adjusting when we don't want it to necessarily. So I will do that. Here's another little trick that I'll use. And this isn't something that's going to apply to everyone, but I want to do it right now because I think that the gold on this looks a little bit too bright and flashy. I think it's probably a little bit more toned down than that. So if I go into the Hsl Adjustments, which stands for hue, saturation, and luminance, fun fact, then I can go into the luminance. That tells me I can adjust individually each color, how light or dark it is. So I can darken the yellows a little bit and just tone down a little bit. And I can also change the hue of it away from yellow to a slightly more gold, if that is appropriate. I think it's probably not a bad call just to do it a little bit subtly. But yeah, that would be that. Okay, so she said the background is medium gray. Medium gray, okay, all right. So that means that I may not be actually able to use the background as a neutral point, because grays actually come in many different colors. Who knew that? So right now, how does the color integrity look of this piece? Does it look accurate? Does it look true to real life? Let me know if it does. Yeah. So I am going to, let's see, how do I do the before and after here? So this is what we have so far with the before and after. Clearly a very large difference, pretty significant, I think. I think that it looks pretty good, but it might be that the background looks a little bit too blown out. Is that accurate? Would you say that the background is a little bit too bright right now? I feel like that could be the case if it's supposed to be a gray. So let's try to tone the whites down, maybe again, to something that looks like this. And then we'll go ahead and lighten the shadows a little bit more. And I can also go to the curves tool, which will give me a little bit more flexibility as well to increase that. And the curves tool really allows you to fine tune things a lot, which is a lot of fun. Now, a bit too light. Okay, so now that I have decreased it, hopefully this looks a little bit more appropriate to the background. It's hard to tell with medium grays because white backgrounds always look gray when they're photographed. So it's hard to tell, and this is another opportunity to know that you are the one who knows your product photos better than anybody else. Okay, so now that we have toned it down a little bit, how is the color on the, on your piece? On your product here. See, let's leave this one here. And then maybe we'll brighten up this dark part here a little bit more. I'll leave you down there. Guys, just never mind me. I'm just talking to myself as I edit this. Let's see, up a little more. Trying to find the right balance here. The color balance is still throwing me off. I feel like it's a bit too warm, but if I cool it off, the charm is going to look bluer, which may be not accurate for the piece at all. So, because she said it's supposed to be medium to teal blue. So I just want to make sure, I think that that's probably pretty good. Now, a good opportunity to show how important it can be to use something like a gray card, because that'll give you a really great starting point for your color balance. And then you can tweak a little bit from there. It's not perfect, but it will give you a baseline of place to go. Now, gray cards is not just a gray piece of paper. It's a specific percentage gray. So I recommend buying an official gray card. They're pretty inexpensive on Instagram. On Amazon, they're like $10. I mean, they're pretty inexpensive. So, oh, okay. So it should be more blue. Okay, good. So we're on the same page as to what this is supposed to look like. Let's go back over here then. Here we go. Okay, now does this look more accurate to you? Because it does to me. This feels better to me, for sure. Let me play around with some of the tones here a little bit more, because now that I know that the background is supposed to be gray, we're giving me a little bit more to go with here. I'm going to go back to my curves tool. See about brightening. Nope, not too much, not too much. Take it down a few notches, fella. All right. So again, with blinding myself here. It looks okay. I mean, I'm a little bit torn. I don't love this color background because it gives me, there's a problem with this shade of gray in that it makes it really difficult to make your product pop without making the background look brighter than it is. The tone is too middle of the road. So I always recommend either going lighter or darker than the medium gray, just for future reference. But if I want to, I think that it looks okay. I want to see the product brighter. But I know that I may lose a bit of the background. So I'm going to leave it at this. I'm going to leave it at this because I think that this probably looks pretty accurate. Here's your before and after. Let me know if you think it's not. I have a few more photos to edit and we're already pretty much out of time. So I want to try to move on from this, but this is the before and after. You can see clearly how much you can do with a raw image and camera raw and how much work you can actually do in it. And I love that. So I'm going to go ahead and click open image. So what this does is it's going to open it in Photoshop. Oh my gosh, Photoshop just closed. Well, that was not helpful at all. That was inappropriate. Bad timing, Photoshop. Hang on, guys. Anyway, you saw the before and after that one, okay? So what that does is it opens up in Photoshop. And if there's any kind of fine tuning you want to do after that, you can. But which ones did I want to do here? We just did that one. I'm going to do this one. And I thought I had one more I wanted to do for, oh no, I didn't. I just had these two other ones to do, which is great because we don't have time to do any more than two. And even that's going to be pushing it. Okay, so let's get started. Now these are both JPEGs, so we're not editing them in Camera Raw. So we're going to do the best we can. Now, I'm going to use some Photoshop actions for these, assuming I actually have them installed, which I do, which is good. So you can see there's a whole bunch of different ones here. Now, these, unlike the Photoshop ones, I don't see a preview when I mouse over them. So I can experiment, like I can do a little trial and error, seeing which ones I like the best. And then if I apply it and I don't like it, I can just either undo or I can delete that layer. Actually, undo doesn't always work because there's several steps in an action. So it'll just undo the last step of the action. So it's better just to delete that layer. So let's say I want to use the way too dark layer. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to play that. That looked pretty good. I don't hate that at all. So that actually just brightened it up a lot. I could probably save this and be done. I could probably just be like, okay, perfect. It's done. That was it. I was done. Like I finished. If I want to do a little bit more with it, I think that the color balance is probably pretty good. Oh my goodness. No, what is happening, Photoshop? It's really having some trouble. Okay, just hang on. Hopefully this is just go away right now. I can't deal with you right now. Okay, it's fine. So you can see this is what it looked like before I applied the action. This is what it looks like after. Might be a little bit on the bluish side. Let's see what happens if we apply the too cold action. So when you do this, you'll see it pops up. It says, adjust the strength of this Photoshop action by changing the opacity on the too cold layer. It's currently set to 50%. So this allows you to apply this action and then strengthen or weaken it. So right now, that's what it looks like. This is what it looked like before. This is what it looks like now. I can either make this photo warmer by increasing it or cooler by decreasing it. So whatever it needs to be. I actually thought it looked probably pretty good at 50%. Is the person who owns this photo here? I don't think they are. But anyway, I feel like this is probably a pretty accurate color for this. Oh, good. Rosemary is here. Does this color accurately represent your soap and label now that I have changed it and kind of warmed it up a little bit because I thought it looked a little bit on the cool side? So here is another thing that I really like about Photoshop actions. I actually prefer Photoshop actions to Lightroom presets. You have so many more options when it comes to Photoshop actions than you do with the Lightroom presets. Like you can change the strength of them. So whenever you click on one of these, it's going to add a new layer to your photo and you can actually change the strength of that layer. So if you apply one and you think it's like a little bit too over the top, then you can tone it down. And if you apply one and you think like it's on the right track, but I just want a little bit more, then you can run that action again and it'll apply that layer on top again and give you extra more of that action thing. So let's just let's play around. So first thing I'm gonna do, when I get a baseline of a photo that I think looks good, then I am going to flatten it. This is a personal preference. You don't have to. I'm pretty sure I could just layer on top of that one. Let's just see what happens. I'm gonna go do brighten whites and click that one. So what that does is just brightened up the whites. So here, let me show you, toggle it on and off. This was it before, and this is it after. So you can just clearly see it just brightened the whites. I think this photo looks fantastic. I think we could export it right now. I think it looks super professional. I think there would be no problem putting this on any website or anything. I think it looks great. But so one of the actions that I have, first of all, is Magic Photo Polish, which I love. So you can just run that. All it does is it gives a little bit of sharpness to the photo, and often it's too much. So right now, this is too much sharpness. I'm going to tone it down to a point where I feel like it looks crisp, but not like over the top. Okay, so that just gives a little tiny bit of crispness. Okay, barely noticeable. Some photos it looks really, really good on, and some photos it's just way too much. It depends on how much, how many edges are in your photo, if that makes sense. So if you have a lot of texture in your products, then that Magic Photo Polish might be a little bit too much. Okay, good. So Rosemary said that that's exactly it. Perfect. So we're on the right track here. Now, another thing you can do, so if you do sell on Amazon or you want to have a photo on the white background, I have an action called the super white background action, which works perfectly for some products. And sometimes you need to do a little extra step because it adjusts, it affects, if you have a photo that has a lot of white in it or light tones, then like your product has a lot of light tones, that it could really negatively impact your product, in which case you'll have to do a little bit of extra masking and things. Well, let's see what happens when we use it with this one. So first thing it does is it warned me that it's going to flatten it. That's fine. Oh, lens not available. Give me a hard time. Oh, nothing's available. Well, this isn't going well. What is happening? Hang on a sec. Doesn't it look good? Just kidding. Hang on a sec. So it actually didn't flatten the image, which is weird. So I might have to go in and tweak that action and make sure that they're a little bit, let me see. Why wouldn't that do that? Yeah, it doesn't seem to have, this might be an older version that I installed on my computer. I might not have installed the right one. So anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and merge it manually because I'm pretty sure that it works fine for the people who actually have it. You guys would know. But so now that I've done that, I'm going to run the action and hit continue. So if you wanted to put this photo on like Amazon or whatever, this photo would now be ready to go directly on Amazon. This background would be a 100% white background. And if you don't love it, you can, like, if you wanted to tone it down because you just wanted a brighter background, then you can tone down the layer a little bit. But do note that if you tone it down, it won't be a pure background. Now, if it did negatively impact your product when you did this, like if your product looked like part of it was all white now, or it was kind of messed up looking, then you can use this layer mask here. This is getting high tech stuff, guys. So if you can tone me out if it's too much, it's okay. You'll get there to a point where this makes a little bit more sense. Then you can go in and you can just brush over your product and kind of just like, let's say we just want a little bit more of the edges in here. Then you can brush over it. It's actually, this one's fine, so it doesn't matter. And then I can also go like this and brush them back out however I please. Yeah, so this is how you can kind of really fine tune it. It's a lot of extra work to do this kind of background. I don't recommend people do it unless it's absolutely necessary, but sometimes it is. And usually in those cases, like if you're selling on Amazon, and most of the time, those photos are probably not one of a kind. You're probably doing more batch stuff. So you can take a photo, like let's say Rosemary sells this exact same product, and when she runs out, she just makes more. You can do this one time, and then you have the photos forever. You don't have to take a new photo every time you make a new product, right? So it's not as bad for that. Anyway, you guys get the point. So that's that photo. Okay, everyone good? I think that's it for that one. I'm going to move on quickly to the last one, and then we're done. Okay, so this one is kind of on a textured gray background that I actually think is really cool. I think that now one thing, so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking that I want the shadows to be a little bit lighter. It's a little bit too contrasty for me. Let's see what happens when we click lighten shadows. Okay, so that helped a little. Let's see what happens when we say tone down highlights. Well, that helped with helped a little. So what this did was it helped tone down the highlights of the product, but it overall gave the image, I think, a little bit too much of a dark feel. So then maybe I would try using this too dark action and see if that gives me the right balance. Yeah, so that does it for me. So for the record, this is what it looked like before. So we lightened the shadows, it helped a little. Okay, so this is what it looked like in the beginning. All right, so we wanted to lighten the shadows, which we did. That helped a little bit. I don't know if you guys can see it as fine-tunedly as I can on my screen because you're watching a live stream, so it might not be, you know, as good as that. So now we want to tone down the highlights because the colors are really highlighted. So when colors look really super bright like this, it's because they're too strongly represented. So they're highlighted. It could be because an image has been oversaturated, but I'm assuming this photo hasn't been edited. So I'm going to go ahead and just tone down the highlights a little bit. Now that I've done that, the photo is too dark. So I'm going to use the too dark action, which is going to lighten the photo as a whole, but it won't increase that richness of the color because the color is already rich enough. I don't want it to be enhanced. So then that just brightens the image as a whole. And this photo is done. That's it. I'm finished. If I hadn't used those Photoshop actions, that would have taken a lot longer. But that really helps. So let's see if we can see a before and after. I didn't show you before and after on the other one either. I'll do that in just a moment. So this was it before. So you can just see like strongly contrasted. The tones are too saturated. I'm getting a really, not having an easy time really seeing the texture of the textile. And now if I go down here, you can see it in a little bit better way because that saturation of the color isn't as aggressive. It isn't as in your face. I think the color balance is probably okay. It might be slightly on the warm side. If I wanted to try that, I could say too warm and then see what we're dealing with. Gotcha. So yeah, that might have helped a little bit. Actually, let me see. I think that actually probably helped. I don't know what the actual tones of the fabric is because I haven't seen it in real life, but I think that this is probably a more accurate color representation. And we can also tone it down a little bit if we think maybe a middle ground is better. So I think that looks pretty good. All right, so before, wait a second, wait for it. This was before, and this was after. All right, and now let's look at rosemary soap. This is now, but this was it when we started. Okay. And this is it now. Or this was it without the super white background action. It depends on what tickles your fancy. For like Etsy or your own website, this is fine. You don't need to have that stark white background for those certain things. But if you sell on Amazon, you might need that, in which case you can use something like this. All right, guys, that's it. Now, don't forget that right now, starting right now until end of day Friday, these Photoshop actions and Lightroom presets are available as a bonus for Snap Sell Succeed. All of the photos you've seen here today are from students in Snap Sell Succeed who have either been in it for a while or maybe who have just joined in the last week because it's been open now for a week. Thanks to all of you who came, and thanks to all of you who submitted photos. I super appreciate it. For anyone who's listening to this and wants to learn more about Snap Sell Succeed, you can go to amytakespictures.com/SSS. It's also in my Instagram bio. So you can find all the details about the program there. If anybody has any questions about it, you can go ahead and DM me or send me an email. More than happy to answer those questions. If you are having a hard time making a decision about it and you're not really sure, Snap Sell Succeed has been a massive game changer for a lot of makers. And with each passing year, feel more and more confident selling this program because I've seen how incredible the transformation has been, not just in photos, but also in people's businesses and what they've been able to achieve and how their business has grown. So if your photos are not great and it is something that you're struggling with, please consider joining the program because it will save you a ton of time, a ton of frustration. And if you're serious about your business, then it is exactly what you need to start getting that business to the next level, because you can put every other piece in place, but if you don't have your product photos, it'll all be for nothing. Okay, that's it, guys. Thanks everyone for joining me. So fun. We'll do this again sometime soon. And I hope you all have an amazing rest of the day. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing now. So join me for a coffee chat on Friday morning if you want, if you're watching this live right now or before Friday morning, because I'm going to have a coffee chat live on my Instagram. So you can hop on over to Instagram to join me for that at 10:30 Eastern time. We're just going to hang out, chat, answer some questions, recap the almost end of the Brilliance Project. It ends on Sunday. Can't believe it. I'm going to have one of my students on chatting too, and we're just going to hang out and drink coffee and talk about stuff. I do coffee chats fairly often, not so much the past few months because COVID also, but it's something I really enjoy and looking forward to getting back to. Okay, guys, thanks so much. Thanks you guys so much for joining into this. It's been a pleasure as always. Look forward to doing it again soon. And we'll talk to you soon, guys. Have a great day.